this is Lisa with Real Property Management Phoenix Valley, and today I'm talking about whether you are a good candidate to become a landlord and enter the investment property game, or would you really be better off selling your home? And we're going to talk about two different categories with this. The first is going to be the cosmetic expectations of the property. And the second is going to be the financial expectations, how you should set yourself up to go into the landlord investment property game. So when I'm talking about expectations, the first category, for example, if your home that you're thinking about renting or selling is very unique to your taste. So, you came in and you did a lot of work that you particularly enjoy. Maybe you've done some different paint colors, or you've done some different tile patterns, all throughout the home. Things that are very specific to your interests, your likes. And also, therefore, you then have a very emotional attachment to the property. Probably in the investment property game is not going to be for you. And I'll give you an example. We recently had a client who came to us. They had bought a new owner-occupied property. So they were looking at making what I'll call their old owner-occupied property into a rental. Now, they had some very specific tastes. So they had black walls, for example. They had some checkered walls where they had done like a really dark blue. Also, they had done a lot of the work inside the home themselves, a lot of the painting. So it wasn't really up to professional contractor standards. So we listed the home for rent. And unfortunately, we did get a lot of feedback from people looking at the home that they didn't like the paint colors, they didn't like the condition of the property. And so we ended up placing tenants at the property anyway, regardless of this feedback. And those tenants then went in and a few of the walls, they actually hired a licensed contractor to come in and paint a neutral beige. So the homeowner went in and they were very upset by the painting that had been done. Unfortunately, it wasn't their aesthetic because, again, they like the blacks, they like the dark blues. And so they were really upset by these two walls that had been painted. And, we tried to explain that really the two walls were in some way of an upgrade because it makes the house more accessible to more people, meaning that you'd have more options when you go to sell it or when you go to rent it. But the homeowner, they had such an emotional attachment to the work they had put into the property that they were extremely upset. So in this type of example, this particular individual really isn't the best to be entering into the investment property realm because their emotional attachment makes it very difficult for them to see from a more neutral perspective. So that's why I say that if you have a lot of emotional attachment to your property, a lot of specific cosmetic things that you've done to the interior or the exterior of the property, then probably selling will be a better option for you because most likely no tenant will be able to live up to your expectation of what you want the property to be and what you want the property to look like. And then secondly, and also extremely important, would be the financial aspect. So we get a lot of homeowners that call us and say that they're interested in making their owner-occupied property a rental because they are looking for strict financial windfall, because everyone's hearing how these rent prices are just astronomical. So the only problem with this mindset is there are going to be times of vacancy and there are going to be repairs needed in the home. So if you're entering into the property management landlord realm expecting for you only to be making money on this property at all times, then again, that expectation is probably not going to be met. A good rule of thumb is that you want to make sure you have about a month and a half worth of mortgage payments put aside for times of vacancy. And then you want to have about a month and a half worth of your monthly rent amount for repairs. So that this way, throughout the time you have this investment property, if you have a 30-day vacancy or you need a large repair, you have the funds, and it doesn't immediately put you into a sense of panic that you're not able to afford what's needed at the property. So just a recap, I would say that if you're very emotionally vested in your property, you have a lot of specific cosmetic things that you've done to the home that you're very attached to, and you're not in a very sound financial position to cover times of vacancy and to cover repairs, then the investment property game probably isn't right for you right now. It doesn't mean it won't be in the future, but just right now. So hope we find this helpful, and we'll look forward to talking with you again next month.